Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Performapal Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile for Post-Dimension Force. We got some new Performapals in the latest Yu-Gi-Oh booster set. The show must go on, as the cover of the booster box showed, and with the new Performapals, definitely a change to the actual Performapal deck. Really awesome support in the form of two new Pendulum monsters. We did get a new Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph in the set as well, which I'll show if you wanted to run it in this deck. We're focusing mostly on a Performapal deck here with a little bit of the Odd Eyes support, but if you wanted to run the new Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph card in this deck, I can show what card you can add in addition to that card. But like I said, very happy with how easy it is to set up the pendulum scales with all the new cards in this set with these cards. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the new Performapal monsters, I'm running 3 Performapal Lady Ange, or Angie, I guess if you wanted to call the name. This is the new Scale 1 monster. Once per turn, when an attack is declared involving your monster and an opponent's monster, you can discard 1 pendulum monster. That opponent's monster loses 1,000 attack until the end of this turn. So it's good for the scale setup, but what's really good about Angie is her monster effect. You can discard this card to 1 Performapal monster, except for Lady Ange, and draw 2 cards. If this card's in your graveyard and you control an Odd Eyes card or a Performapal Gentrude, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone. You can only use this effect of Performapal Lady Ange effect per turn, and only once that turn. So being able to set up a low scale in your Pendulum scale is very useful by just controlling another card. We have plenty of different Odd Eyes cards in the deck, including some of the older ones, but also the new Performapal Gentrude works right in hand with this card as well. And the discard for draw power can just go into more important cards while setting up other ones, like I said, like Lady Ange, that are definitely much more recyclable in the graveyard to get back onto the field. As for the other new card, I am running 2 of the new Performapal Gentrude. If you wanted to run 3 of this card, I definitely do consider that it could be a potential 3 of in the deck, just with its overall consistency with its destruction. If this card is destroyed, you can place 1 Performapal Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum Zone, except for a Performapal Gentrude. And if this card is face up in your extra deck, you can discard 1 Pendulum monster to add this card to your hand. Then you can return 1 Performapal Odd Eyes card from your Pendulum Zone to the hand. You can only use this effect of Gentrude once per turn, and only 1 per turn. So with that effect and activation, you have both of these options available to you with Gentrude. It's also your high scale, so being able to complete the pendulum scale when you just control Gentrude by setting the Lady Ange from your graveyard can give you the 1 through 8 scale. That is normally the required setup for a lot of different Performapal decks. Once again, you could run 3 of this card. If you were to run a 3rd copy of this card, you can always drop 1 of the copies of Lady Ange. I do like the draw power with her, but I do find the Gentrude consistency to be a little more important in the deck. So that could be one of the options you'd want to put in for a 3rd copy of this card. And in the Pendulum Zone, if a Performapal Lady Ange is in your other Pendulum Zone, you control no monsters or only Pendulum monsters, you can add 1 Odd Eyes card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Gentrude once per turn. So having the option to search out the new Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph monster or the original Odd Eyes is always an available option with these cards, giving you the Pendulum summon of a pretty big boss monster on the field that can not only be summoned out quite easily, but then also be used for a good majority of the extra deck for all the different monsters we can summon out. For some of the additional high numbers for the Performapals, I also run the 3 Skullcrabat Joker, just another searcher, being able to search out any of the 2 that I just mentioned with Skullcrabat Joker, or even any of the 1-ofs for the Performapal monsters, because there are some specific 1-ofs in the deck that definitely do much better as 1-ofs, because they basically fill in that one role that they're meant to do, whether it be Synchro Summon or Fusion Summon. You have all of them available to you with this card. For more of the destruction capabilities in the deck, I also run 3 Pendulum Sorcerer with this card. When it's special summon, you can target up to 2 cards you control, destroy them, and if you do, add Performapal monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, except for Pendulum Sorcerer, equal to the number of cards destroyed. So with it, you have the option to destroy the Gentrude in the Pendulum scale, and then activate this card, adding and setting up another card in your scale for the card that Pendulum Sorcerer destroyed, along with what you destroyed and searched off of Gentrude. So you're basically replacing the Pendulum scale thanks to Pendulum Sorcerer's own Pendulum Summon, and then you can set up just something else in the Pendulum scale that you can use later on. I also run 3 of the Performapal Second Donkey. It's another Searcher. Now, this could be another potential card you drop for a 3rd copy of Gertrude. The Search is good when you have both your scales set up, but we do have the 3 Skullcrobat Joker in the deck as well, so I could definitely recommend dropping down this to a 2 of copy, and then with that, just running your 3 ofs for the Gertrudes in the deck with your 3 of count right there. But still, if you have both of the scales set up with your second Donkey, you can send 1 Performapal monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for second Donkey. If you have 2 cards in your Pendulum Zone, you can add to your hand instead. Now, normally I would add the card with second Donkey, but there are situations where you could just send the Lady Ange to the graveyard, have the Gertrude or the Odd Eyes card set up, and complete a Pendulum Scale with your second Donkey thanks to that play if you don't already have a Pendulum Scale set up because of it. And for some of the lower numbers for the Performapals, I also run 2 Performapal Celestial Magician. During your main phase, if it was normal or special this turn, you can apply the following effect for the rest of the turn based on the other monsters you control. If it's a fusion, it can attack directly. Synchro, your opponent can activate monster effects. XYZ, this card's attack becomes double its original attack. Or Pendulum, during the end phase, add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. Kind of copying all the different cards from the Dimension Dragons, whether it be Clearwing, Odd Eyes, Starving Venom, or Dark Rebellion. This card kind of takes on the form of all those, and then just having the higher scale 8 option for the additional plays when 1 face-up fusion synchro exceeds is special summon from the extra deck and destroyed by battle. You can special summon that destroyed monster back onto the field. I also run for some of the 1-ofs. We do run a good number of 1-ofs, but like I said, with cards like Pendulum Sorcerer and also Skullcrobat making them searchable, that's why I'm fine with running the 1-of copies. So the 1 Odd Eyes Dissolver, this is in here for the fusion plays. The 1 Daggerman. Now, this is for more Pendulum plays and low skill options when it's Pendulum Summon to send a Performapal from your hand to the graveyard to draw 1 card, along with more of the Lady Ange draw options with this one. The 1 Odd Eyes Synchron for the synchro plays, and also with the level 5 Daggerman, an easier way to summon out the level 7 monsters, having a level 5 target because of it. Also the 1 Odd Eyes Minotaurus. This is in here for more of the piercing battle damage that you can do with this card if your Pendulum monster attacks an opponent's monster, making that monster lose 100 attack. And from the Pendulum Scale, having the inflicting piercing damage to your opponent. And also the 1 Odd Eyes Unicorn, another Odd Eyes target. Having Minotaurus, Unicorn, and Dissolver in the Pendulum Scale can also help to set up Lady Ange in the Pendulum Scale because of the Odd Eyes in their name. For some additional 1-ofs in the deck, I also run the 1 Performapal Trump Witch. Tributing this card, add Polymerization from your deck to your hand, and Polymerization is needed because of the Odd Eyes Metal Claw, specifically saying it must be fusion summoned and gaining the additional card effect if it was used with Polymerization, which we'll get to when we go over the extra deck. I also run the 1 Yugioh Golem during the main phase if it was Pendulum Summon. Being able to fusion summon gives us another option along with Odd Eyes Dissolver and Polymerization in the deck, and also the 1 Odd Eyes Light Phoenix for the additional boost and protection from the Pendulum Scale. The 1 Get Turtle for draw power when you can set it up with the Lizard draw as well. One of my favorite plays to do with the Pendulum Sorcerer. And for the rest of the monsters in the main deck, just the 2 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Now, you could always drop down 1 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon for the copy of Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. I know it's going to be a little more difficult of a card to gain access to because it is a secret rare, but if you did want to run it in the deck, this would be the spot you could take out 1 copy of this for that copy of Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. But being an Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and being searchable with the new card Gertrude, when you control both the cards in your scales, being able to add an Odd Eyes card means not only can you add this card, but the other Odd Eyes cards that we also mentioned already, which is the main focus for the Performapal deck altogether. And that is it for the monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 Performapal Popper Up. You send up to 3 cards from your hand to the graveyard and draw that many cards. Then you can special summon up to as many monsters from your hand with different names that are Performapal monsters and Magician monsters and or Odd Eyes monsters with a level in between your Pendulum Scales. For each one you didn't special summon, you lose 1,000 life points, but that's basically the point of Performapal Popper Up as an additional Pendulum Summon. I definitely do like it for the play you can do. We did get a new spell in this set that allows you to perform an additional Pendulum Summon, but that's from the extra deck. I feel with our hand consistency in this deck, this card definitely does come up more as useful than that card in the deck, and that's why I chose to run Performapal Popper Up instead. For more of the Odd Eyes search power and protection for our Pendulum Scales, I also run the 2 Sky Iris, being able to search out any of the Odd Eyes monsters that I spoke of already in the deck, thanks to this card. I feel you only need 2, though. Once you set it up in the Pendulum Scale, it just becomes a searcher, mostly, but you don't want to have too many copies of it, because it's not one that you can rely on with multiple copies in your hand. Another searcher off of the Sky Iris and another fusion edition is Odd Eyes Fusion, just being able to fusion summon out an Odd Eyes monster using monsters we control from the extra deck, and once again it's searchable with Sky Iris since it has Odd Eyes in the name. I also run 2 Performance Hurricane for being able to bounce back our opponent's monsters to their hand for how many Performapal monsters we control is a big plus for sure, especially if they're extra deck monsters. And for more search power, I also run 2 Duelist Alliance. You can search out Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon with this, but your Pendulum Sorcerer also has Pendulum in its name, so as long as there is a Pendulum card on the field in the Pendulum Zone, you can search out this card for the start of one of your special summon plays to go very nicely along with the Performapal Gentrude's Destruction play. And then for the last copies of the spells in the main deck, I run the 1 Fusion Substitute. This is the searchable card off the Trump Witch, and the added play, as I said before, for the Odd Eyes Metal Claw, and the 1 Foolish Burial. Now, normally I would run this with the Dark Worm lineup, but this actually does come up more than enough with the Lady Ange Pendulum Scale set. So with this activating your Foolish Burial, you're basically just setting the Lady Ange in your Pendulum Zone after you send it to the graveyard, as long as you have the play to then set it up in the graveyard, because remember, you can only activate 1 Lady Ange effect per turn, and only once that turn. So if you use the draw effect, you can't use the other play. You can at least use the Foolish Burial to send Lady Ange to the graveyard, controlling that other Odd Eyes card to then set it in the Pendulum Scale for your Pendulum Summon. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. For the Performapal Fusion monsters, I run 1 Odd Eyes Metal Claw Performapal and 1 Gatling Ghoul. Gatling Ghoul is more for the destruction, burn damage. And with Odd Eyes Metal Claw, it cannot be used as fusion material. And if it was fusion summoned with polymerization, it's unaffected by other card effects. And when it declares an attack, all monsters you currently control gain your additional attack power of your 300 damage until the end of the battle phase. Being more of a Silver Claw play, that's what the make of the card is. Kind of like a combination between Odd Eyes and Performapal Silver Claw all together, but still a great fusion, just needing 1 Odd Eyes monster and 1 Performapal to make it. For the additional fusion monsters, I also run 1 Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, along with 1 Odd Eyes Pendulum, or Rune Eyes Pendulum Dragon. The 1 Starving Venomy Dragon, needing 1 Dark Monster and 1 Pendulum Monster, once again easy to make in this deck. Same with Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, and 1 of the new Peticiel Coverture. This card just needs 2 Pendulum Monsters, and if this card's in the Monster Zone is destroyed, you can place it into your Pendulum Scale. Another option for a low-scale Pendulum card, and while it's in the Pendulum Zone, if you have no card in your other Pendulum Zone, you can place 1 face-up Pendulum Monster from your extra deck into that zone. Having plenty of high-scale cards that aren't affected by having a non-Performapal Pendulum Scale can mean this is a great additional setup on the field to make use of for the destruction play. And then for the Link monsters, I run 1 of the new Beyond the Pendulum. With this card, if it's in the Link summon into the extra monster zone, you can pay 1,000 life points to add 1 Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand for the rest of this turn. Unless you Pendulum summon that card, you cannot activate its effect. And with it also being able to then, if 2 monsters with different original levels are Pendulum summoned to the same zone this one points to, you can target 2 cards on the field and destroy them, making up for the additional Pendulum summon you'll want to perform, needing just 2 effect monsters, including a Pendulum monster. This is a great addition to any Pendulum deck that relies on those plays. So you definitely want to run this in the Performapal deck for that added option. I also run the 1 Cross Sheep with all the different extra deck summoning we do in this deck, along with 1 Barricade Board Blocker and the 1 Vert Anaconda. It pops up with the fusion cards we run, being able to send it. I don't know if they're going to hit this card on the following ban list, so if you do want to remove this for anything else, you can try some of the Nightmare lineup, including Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus, or Nightmare Unicorn for this spot in the deck. And then for the rest of the lineup, for the Xyz monsters, the 1 Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon and the 1 Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. For when you can get these plays out, even Odd Eyes Absolute when sent for a Link summon, being able to get out Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon off its special summon, and Dark Rebellion for being more of the play to get over some of the bigger monsters your opponent may have. With the Synchros just being 1 Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon and the 1 Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Technically, you could run Zark in this deck. If you were to do that, that can even be another spot for the Vert Anaconda to take out, with us running all 4 of the Dimension Dragons in this build. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, we already spoke of before with the Lady Ange combo setup, but being able to discard this card and 1 other Performapal, except for Lady Ange, to draw 2 cards to your hand. Depending on what you draw, can then make that setup for that as well. And being able to only activate 1 Performapal Lady Ange effect per turn, remember that as well. So if you just send the second Donkey on the field and send Lady Ange, you can then activate the Gentrude from your hand and set Lady Ange there, since you didn't activate her first card effect, and then go for the Pendulum summon. If you pendulum summon your pendulum sorcerer, you could destroy the 2 cards, sending them to the extra deck, and then activate the Gentrude, which then, depending on what you may want to set up in your pendulum scale, you can go for cards that would either help with a fusion play, ones that would either help with a synchro play. Being able to target a Perform Power Odd Eyes card you control, and that face-up monster is treated as a tuner. Also, its level becomes 1, meaning you can adjust those numbers for some pretty big synchro summons depending on what you set up with your Gentrude. But still, don't forget you'll have the draw off the pendulum sorcerer, so you could potentially get another card to set in the other scale for additional draw power, or pendulum summon out the following turn, or ones for more search. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. A big fan of Performapals, so this set was definitely one that I'm going to be investing in to complete a bunch of decks, because we also have Pendulum Magicians, Odd Eyes itself. With all this new support, you definitely have plenty of different decks to add and support too. And I hope you all look forward to this set as well. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.